I'm Jason Flores. I'm on staff with Bow Down. I have been on staff for about a year, and I am the Project 516 coordinator and the men's leader. Well, I've been for most of the year. Um, if this is your first Sunday, welcome. We're glad you're here. You should have received a bulletin on your way in. If you open it up, there should be a connection card. Fill this out so that we know that you came. If you put your email, you'll be able to get Bow Down announcements. So events, outreaches, things that are happening in the community. This is a good way to know what's going on. So fill this out if it's your first time. Also, there's a book in the back entrance called "A Shepherd Looks at Psalm 23." It's a really good book. That's our gift to you. If it's your first time, or if you never grabbed it and you want to grab it, you should. We have a couple announcements. First thing, scripture reading this week. We're actually starting Job, so if you haven't been following, now's a good time to start over or start in the first place. The reading is Job 1 through 18, and then Psalms 135 through 141. There's a schedule on the back table, also where the book is. So next week, the parking lots will be under construction. Well, it'll start next week. It'll be going on for a while throughout the summer. So the south parking lot, which is that way, there's a gate. So parents with children, park there so that you don't have to cross the street, because everybody else will be parking at the Lord's place. There are still some details that need to be finalized, and you will receive an email this week. But please try to come earlier than usual, just because it's going to take some time to cross the street, check your kids in, get situated. So know that you'll need to be looking for an email this week. Also, KAA sponsors are needed. There is an amount owed of $1,000 and $1,010 is the amount Bow Down paid for the kids to go to camp. I don't know anything else about that, so if you have questions, ask Face, Pastor Stephen. And if you feel led to give, plug in. Thank you, Pastor Chris. And then lastly, next week, we will have a pizza farewell party for the 516ers. That will be their official last day of program. So after the service, you want to stick around and have pizza and say goodbye. There are a couple that are leaving out of state pretty soon after that Sunday. So plan on staying afterwards and saying bye and just fellowshipping and having a good time, because we are going on a retreat this week. So I'm up here giving the announcements because today is Project 516's graduation service. This is a really special Sunday. I did it 2 years ago. And I'm really excited that you guys have made it 10 months and you're graduating. But for those that are not familiar with Project 516, Project 516 is a 10-month discipleship program through our church where young men and women move into the inner city. I'm often asked to describe what Project 516 is, and sometimes I have a hard time describing it because in a lot of ways, when we describe the word disciple, our goal in Project 516 is for people to rearrange their lives around the person and practice of Jesus Christ. And so really what they've been doing the past 10 months has been an entire lifestyle switch. They've just been setting their hearts on Christ. What that means, though, is that they've been living together, they've been praying together, worshiping together, eating together, cooking for one another, learning together, playing together. A typical week, they have teachings, outreaches, prayer walks. They're serving the churches from cleaning the office and the bathrooms to set up and break down. They kind of are everywhere in all the ministries. They have their hands and they have their feet in everything. So they also have Amanda and I are their leaders. So the men meet with me, the women meet with Amanda. They have peer accountability. They have spiritual parents. They're meeting and they're being poured into with a lot of people and by a lot of people. So that's kind of what the program is. If you don't know it, I think a lot of you guys know what Project 516 is. So I am so proud of you guys, these guys. They have laid down everything for 10 months to walk like a disciple. You may not know them now, but I know a lot of you do. But a lot of these people could have done different things for the past 10 months. Matt could have pursued business, and he could have made great money. He could have furthered his own business. Claudia is witty, smart, intelligent. She could have went to college and thrived, but she chose to lay down her life for 10 months. Anna's only been here for a year in Florida, and she jumped in and took a leap of faith and jumped into a community that she didn't even know just to become like Christ. Charlene could have went to grad school, but she laid down her life. Aaron could have finished school, but put it to the side just to pursue Christ-likeness. They all laid down their lives for Jesus' sake, to be like him, to know him, and to be completely sold out for him. And I'm really proud of you guys for doing that. So all 5 interns will be sharing testimonies from the past 10 months. They will share a part of their testimonies as a monologue, which is kind of like a creative way of expressing how God has moved in the past 10 months in their lives and in the lives of people around them. You're going to notice that they're sharing very intimate things that they've learned, that they've endured through, that they've conquered, that they've had victory over. And it's going to be really sweet and really precious, and really you're going to see a lot of the fruit. But what you don't get to see is the 6 to 8 chapters that they read every day, and waking up at 5 a.m. to go to prayer walk, and spending 2 hours in intercessory prayer every day, or 1 hour and then 1 hour during prayer walk, and all the effort that they put into this program. Right now you get to see the fruit, and we get to rejoice in what God has done. But they've endured, and they have laid down their life, and they deserve honor and respect for that reason. So, like it says at the end of the book of John, how he says, Jesus, I couldn't even keep an account of all the things. I couldn't fit it in this book, basically. They couldn't come up here on a Sunday morning and just have Sunday morning to share all the things that they've seen Jesus do. They only get 10 minutes. But I promise you, they could take up an entire service. So I'd encourage you to talk to them after, or pursue relationships with them to see what God has shown them, because they have seen the face of God this year. So I pray that the Lord ministers to you as you hear Project 516 share their testimonies of God's truth being worked out in their lives. So we're going to get started. I hope you enjoy.
Hello, my name is Anna, and I'm going to be sharing with you what God has done in my life while I was in Project 516. First, I want to give a little background on my life before Project 516. I was born in Ukraine in 1994. My parents are Oleg and Yanuk, and they were born in the Ukraine. My mom was married to another man before my dad and had a son with him, who is my half-brother Maxim. Once my parents got married, my mom had 6 more kids, 4 born in Ukraine and 2 in Washington. My dad and mom moved to Washington. Growing up, my family got along from what I could see as a child, but when I got older, I learned that my dad was abusive towards my mom. He raped her, and he was also abusive towards my older brother Maxim. Eventually, our neighbors heard about my dad being abusive toward my mom and called the cops. When I was 9, my parents divorced. I went to my dad's place sometimes, but my mom was my main caretaker. My dad ended up breaking the restriction order that was between him and my mom, and was then deported to jail in Ukraine. After my dad left, my brother Maxim took on a role he shouldn't have at a young age. He watched 6 kids while my mom was either working or out somewhere. My brother became very controlling towards my siblings and I. All of us were abused by him. I was emotionally and physically abused. The emotional abuse was the worst. He called me names and then asked my siblings in front of me if he was right, and they agreed with him. I internalized the hurtful words as a child. At age 11, my elementary school found out my siblings and I were neglected and not getting our needs met. My mom was hardly home to feed us, so we were taken from our home and put in foster care. At age 13, I was placed in a foster home that I believed was going to become my permanent home because my foster dad had said he would become my dad. But after being there for a while, I came home one day and found that my stuff was packed and I was moving. After that, I moved in with the Kellers. At age 15, my sister Victoria and I were adopted by my parents, Chad and Rebecca. They have three boys biologically and 5 other children whom they adopted. That's 8 total. I experienced a lot of healing and recovery in my parents' home. They are Christian and encourage me in my walk of faith. For the most part, I stayed out of trouble as a teenager. I graduated high school and became a dental assistant while in high school. But after school, my childhood problems followed me. I struggled with depression and anxiety. I went to counseling while I was in college, but came to a breaking point and had to take myself out of college. I moved back in with my parents and continued with counseling and working a full-time job. I moved back in. That summer, I was invited to live with my sister Lydia in Florida. I came to Florida in September of 2016. I worked at High Place and began attending Bow Down. Even being in a new place and working a new job, I continued battling with anxiety. I found out about inner healing at Bow Down and was on board for that. But then I ended up hearing about Project 516 and was intrigued by it and applied to the program. For me, Project 516 has been a place where I've been able to take away healing, restoration, and growth. I've experienced healing from things in my past and wounds from my childhood. One way I've experienced healing was by forgiving my biological parents for leaving me as a child. I walked through releasing bitter root judgments I had against them. I worked through writing out what hurt me that was said or done and then forgiving them for it. Another thing was releasing shame I felt and asking for forgiveness for believing as truth hurtful things that were said to me and renouncing them as lies. One of the ways I worked through removing lies I adopted was by detoxing my mind with scripture. In the program, we read a book called Switch on Your Brain, and it taught about renewing your mind with scripture. I also received restoration while being in the program. I experienced restoration with my adopted dad and mom through forgiveness. In Project 516, we had a teaching given to us about forgiveness and how to assess a debt that is owed. When I went home during Christmas break, I was getting ready to have dinner one night with Victoria and my adopted parents, and an old memory came to mind of something that happened between my parents and I. Although a number of years had passed since the conflicting situation happened, I decided to bring it up. I expressed to them that I was sorry for what I had done and how it affected our relationship. They forgave me, and it helped change and restore part of my relationship with each of them. And lastly, I experienced growth through Project 516. I learned how to better live in community and how important communication is and how to maintain it. One of the things we did in Project 516 was